Hello students, praise the Lord. You're welcome to this lecture number 11. It's called Wisdom, Get Wisdom. And in this chapter, we're going to deal with the books, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Job, and Song of Songs. The objectives we want to achieve by the end of this lecture are: 1. Define wisdom as a distinct way of thinking about God's moral design in creation. Number 2, distinguish between instructions and proverbs in the book of Proverbs. 3. Illustrate the problem of theodicy as it is found in Job and Ecclesiastes. 3. Discuss the relationship of wisdom and love, especially as found in the Song of Songs. Okay, the book outline, we have Proverbs, and in it it's divided into 3 sections. One's called instructions in wisdom, that is chapter 1 to 9. Then the Proverbs of Solomon, chapter 10 to 29. And then sayings of anger and Lamel in chapter 30 to 31. Then the book of Job, we get Job's affliction. Then 2, Job and friends. 3, Elihu's speeches. God and whirlwind. Then another one is Ecclesiastes. We shall look at the vanity of life, look at the wise sayings. Then finally, in Song of Songs, we shall look from courtship to marriage, and then wedding celebration. Wisdom. Wisdom is an outgrowth of the biblical doctrine of creation. In other words, as people grow in the knowledge of the Bible, they are looking at creation. So they get wisdom out of the creation they have been seeing. And wisdom addresses the part of values classification or a training in good living. It's an addition to the curriculum which provides basic vocational skills in writing, math and science and art and music. So in addition to the art or skills in writing, math, science, music and all others, we add on wisdom. Ancient Hebrew, the Hebrews in the ancient time didn't have schools like we have today, and children learnt at home. Others learnt in the village, and for a few at the royal courts. They didn't have schools. So in the later setting, they were exposed to great civilization like the Egyptians, Babylonians, and Sumerians. So we see later they're exposed to other civilizations, and therefore these also help in the growth of the wisdom. And wisdom in the Bible, what should be clear, is not a promise from God to his people. Wisdom is not a commandment as part of the covenant. Wisdom is not a record of God's saving acts and miracles. Wisdom is not an interpretation of history. Wisdom is not a vision of God's coming judgment and salvation. And wisdom is not a prayer or hymn of praise. This should be clear. In short, wisdom not in the main flow of biblical revelation, but is an outgrowth of its doctrine of creation. So the order of created things find distinctions and unity. So wisdom is coming out of the order of created things. Then also the ability of man in God's image to understand souls. Then the fear of God as an instinct which guides the moral life. You remember, everybody is supposed to fear God as an instinct in him. And this one guides the moral life. Then the goodness of man and woman as embodied souls. Then we have the goodness of fleshly desire leading one into folly. And then found the family as the natural unit of education and culture. And then finally, the curses and blessings of life and death built into everyday experience. Let us go to the book of Proverbs. This book of Proverbs is a flagship of the wisdom literature of the Bible. It incorporates the essentials of wisdom. King Solomon is remembered as the youth or the patron who preferred wisdom over wealth and came to be recognized as the wisest and wealthiest man of his day. Remember when he had just ascended to the throne, he asked God asked him, can you ask for anything you want and it will be granted? And Solomon, of all things, asked for wisdom. But in return, God gave him wisdom, but also wealth, actually, and peace. So the main characteristics of wisdom include justice, knowledge, listening, honesty, integrity, and fear of God. Those are the characteristics of wisdom. You can't have wisdom and you have injustice, or you don't have knowledge. You cannot listen. You are not honest. You have no integrity, or you don't fear God. So, according to the Bible, wisdom goes with these characteristics. Okay, what is a proverb? Proverbs, these are wise sayings presented in a form of short, concise sentences that convey moral truth. Proverbs are an all-pervading part of African culture and formed what we could call a wisdom tradition in Africa. What am I saying? That what happened to the Hebrews? Even in Africa, we have a lot of proverbs we use. People have been using these ones even when they're reading news. If you have listened to the man who reads the news on Wicked One, he uses proverbs a lot. Our parents have used the proverbs, and these proverbs are in every language of us all, where people are guiding their children, they're guiding the way people should behave, and warning each other. So, Hebrew wisdom examines many of the themes of everyday life. It points out that things come from God and ultimately return to Him or turn back to God. The book of Proverbs was written to teach people how to attain wisdom, discipline, and prudence. In other words, being sensible in life, and how to do what is right, just, and fair. In short, to apply divine wisdom to daily life and to provide moral instruction, as we find in Proverbs chapter 2, verse 2 and 3. The main sections of Proverbs, the main sections of this book. The book of Proverbs has two main sections. The first section is called instructions, and the second section is called comparison or proverbs. Instructions. Instructions are from chapter 1 to chapter 9, and are in imperative form. Do this or don't do this. In other words, the instructions are not in a way of begging you or agreeing with you, but just imperative. Do this or don't do this. That's how they go. For example, chapter 4 says, whoever abides by these instructions is described as a wise person. Parents are urged to give advice and counsel to their children about how they should live. Then part 2, which is instructions, that one covers from chapter 10 to chapter 22, verse 16. Comparisons are usually indicative. So they're comparing two people or two things, but as they compare, as if they're indicating what should be chosen. It's very clear. They're comparing, but you indicative that you choose this one. This is the way, this is what it is, not. The instructions are the doorway to wisdom in that they urge teachability as the prerequisite for growth in moral life. So, wisdom is asking a child or somebody to accept to be taught, to accept to learn. Somebody who says, I don't want to learn, cannot pretend to have wisdom, or who thinks he has enough. That's not the characteristic for teachability. The wages of wisdom and folly, that is life and death. We find the writer of wisdom goes ahead here to give the wages for wisdom and for being stupid or death. One, at the heart of all wisdom is the clear divide between good and evil. Youth by nature is simple and unformed tattering between wisdom and folly. So the youth in nature, youthful life tends to be simple and easier. And in it you find somebody is pulling between wisdom and folly. Proverbs insists that training in wise ways will bring earthly prosperity and joy. Folly, on the other hand, offers the youth a quick fix of pleasure, but its end is sorrow and death. So they are trying to bring this one to show that a younger man should train in wisdom. And if he has wisdom, automatically he will enjoy the worldly life. There will be prosperity and joy. But if he chooses folly, it's just the opposite of it. And folly usually brings quick fix of pleasure, happiness. But but its end is sorrow and death. So compare the two women in Proverbs 9 with two builders you find in Matthew chapter 7. So two builders, one building on soil, on sand, another one building on rock foundation. When wind came, the one who built on sand, it was blown away. Yet for the one who built on the rock, it was firm. So wisdom is personified as a woman. There's a comparison of a responsible woman of good character to a prostitute, which is foolishness. So which of these would you follow of the two women? They mention how a good woman, a noble woman, should behave. What she does, she wakes up in the morning, he works hard. But for the prostitute, he lures people into destruction. Okay, understanding Proverbs, form and content. So if you want to understand Proverbs better, there are two main things, that is the form and content. This book contains a lot of proverb collections. These expose a rich tapestry of human behavior for view. We can understand the warp and woof in terms of their form and content. So we're going to look at the form, how they are formed, and also what is contained in them, and the content. Form. Proverbs are built on the basic human instincts to distinguish and compare one thing with another. They make use of the poetic device of parallelism in the variety of ways between wisdom and folly. So we're going to look at some are in contrast, some are made in similarity, others are made in analogy. So it's contrast. Usually, for contrast, these usually connect two opposites and usually use but as an injunction. So, for example, um, chapter 12, verse 4. Lazy hands make a man poor, but diligent hands bring wealth. So it's bringing up two things. It's teaching, but it's decided to compare the two things. Then similarity. Somewhere it uses something to do with things which are similar. Uses repetition of two equivalent objects or qualities. The two objects are equivalent. For example, chapter 15, verse 23, a man finds joy in giving an apt reply. And how good is a timely word? In other words, they're teaching somebody not to reply very fast, but be timely. But they're using similarity to bring us what they want. Then analogy. This type compares two apparently unlike things as equivalent or differing in degrees. Two things which are different but somehow equivalent. For example, in chapter 15, verse 17, it says, like a gold ring in a pig's snout is a beautiful woman without discretion. So what they're saying, if you see a pig and you put a gold ring, maybe I can use the word nose on its nose. The pig doesn't know the value of gold. It will put it even in the dung, it can put it in the mud, it can put it in everywhere. So like it happens to a pig, so it is also with a woman who is very beautiful but without judgment. You are very good. Maybe you have been married by everybody, or you slander people, or you are a thief, you are a convict, criminal. So a woman who is very beautiful but without discretion is compared to a pig which has a ring in the nose. It doesn't know the value. Then there are others which are more of completion, a sentence completing the other. This uses the entire line to give an example or make an exhortation. For example, chapter 19, verse 24, I've brought two here. The sluggard buries his hand in the dish. He will not even bring it back to his mouth. Another one is chapter 17, verse 14. Starting a quarrel is like breaching a dam. So drop the matter before the dispute breaks out. So they're saying, if you're starting a quarrel, you are very weak. They're going to destroy you. So it's like breaching a dam. When the dam leaves the water to flow for you, you will not like it. So drop the matter before. So they're trying to give advice on how people should behave. Okay, leave the form. Now you go to the content. Due to moral relativism of our age, ethics have revived the words virtue and vice. When we talk of the word moral relativity means something is good depending on the person who says it. For example, you can say somebody is tall, but when you stand with short people, you become a tall person yourself. Or you are short because you are standing with only tall people. So you are being tall or you are being short is relative. Some people can be calling you beautiful, and yet you are only beautiful because you stay with only ugly people. But if you stood together with the very beautiful ones, you'll be ugly as well. So that's what we call relative. So now, morality at the moment in the modern world today has been put to be relative. What you think is immoral, what is bad, others are praising it as good. So because of this, the people who are specialists in ethics have revised the words virtue and vice to evaluate behavior. So according to Proverbs, virtue is rewarded and vice is punished in God's eyes and in concrete material consequences. Below is Solomon's top 4 lists of virtues and vices. So I bring the vices and virtues as per Solomon. 4 of them. One is knowledge is good, but there's a big difference between knowledge, that is having facts, and wisdom, applying those facts to life. So knowledge is good, but having knowledge and wisdom is different. In other words, you can study and have everything, but when you don't have wisdom. I have an example of a man in my home village who studied and was an engineer, marine engineer, but he became a drunkard in the village. He died a useless person. Anybody, even those who have not studied, will find it have beaten him. So he has knowledge. In class, he would beat everybody, but no wisdom, no use of it. We may amass knowledge, that's the second. We may amass knowledge, but without wisdom, our knowledge is useless. We must learn how to live out what we know to be right and true. The main theme of Proverbs is the nature of true wisdom. Solomon writes, "Fear of the Lord is the foundation of true knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and discipline." The fools would not want to do wisdom. They do not want to do wisdom. They don't want discipline. So they easily die. So here we are, the virtues and the vices as brought by Solomon. Okay, one, the vices. Virtues, I will say the virtue and then the vice is the opposite. And if you follow this PowerPoint, you see it on slide number 17. Prudence. Solomon brings one called prudence. Is exercised above all in one's speech and financial dealings. You are prudent, a prudent person in the way he deals, the way he speaks, and the way he deals with finances. The opposite of prudence is called fool, evidenced by being angry, hasty, and easily discouraged. The way you talk. Some people can utter any word they don't mind. They're not sensitive whether they're hurting anybody, or they're suggesting something, or they're angering anybody. And when it comes to financial dealings, they cannot be trusted. You're a husband but can't be trusted by your children or even by your wife, or your wife can't be trusted by your husband. So that's that. Then another virtue is justice, a virtue of being honest and fair, mostly displayed in economics and political affairs, politics, fitting for a king or politicians. When you're judging, you must be fair. You should judge people without siding with one, but being neutral. That is justice. And the opposite of justice, unjust man, is often called a false witness or simply a wicked. If you don't have justice, you are a wicked person. You are called to give witness. Instead, you are talking what is not true. You are a wicked person. or you are unjust. Then another virtue is called the diligence. That's virtue of steady hard work. Immediate result is prosperity. Diligence is to do with, if you are doing some work, for example, you came to study, you diligently study. Not today you study, tomorrow means needs to keep time, the other you don't keep it, or tomorrow you have gone to work, tomorrow you have not worked, or you have started the garden, you don't continue. Diligence is to do what you have been doing faithfully and continue with it. The opposite of that is laziness, which results from sluggish, one who makes himself the victim of poverty. There are many people who are very poor and they want to blame the government, they want to blame everybody, but themselves, they cannot work, they cannot be consistent, they are not diligent. And lastly, piety. That is the fear of God, the virtue of honoring God and associates with in the various sections of society. In other words, the fear of God, being holy, in the other words, you can use the word holy, so that people can trust you. And the opposite of that is arrogant man or mocker, acts as if God does not see and judge his motives and actions. He just behaves as if there's no God anywhere in the world. So we can just have a small break here, and then we're going to continue from here. God bless you.